Welcome back to my channel. My name's Corey. I'm a blacksmith here in the Pacific Northwest. This is my shop, and today I'm going to be building an anvil stand. This is my current setup, and it's an anvil that I bought at a garage sale a few years ago, and this is the anvil that I am going to be building a stand for. This new anvil is basically brand new. It was a gift to me from an amazing blacksmith named Terry Carson, who has passed away now. So I think this would be a great way to honor his memory, to actually get this anvil up and running. There are many ways to skin a cat, and there's just about as many ways to build an anvil stand, but I'm going to be basing my design today on the materials that I have available, which just happens to be some boards that are about 12 by 1. So during the design process, I need to make a few decisions. The first one is how high off the ground I want the face of the anvil to be. In this case, I want it to be about 35 to 36 inches. Then I subtract the height of the anvil itself from that, which leaves me with about 24.5 inches, which is perfect because that's the width of two of my boards. I'm going to measure my anvil's footprint to see what dimensions the top of my stand needs to be. And finally, I need to decide what dimensions I want the base of the stand to be. For me, this was 18 by 18 inches. I like to do as little measuring as possible, so I'm going to use these measurements as my guidelines for the cuts that I make, rather than making any complicated calculations of angles. I'm going to cut my first piece of board at exactly 18 inches, and yes, I am using a jigsaw. My skill saw decided to burn out before this video. And I'm going to cut my base plate and then check it against the base of my anvil to make sure it's correct, which it is, so that's awesome. So I've got all my boards cut, and I need to turn them into a triangle-ish shape for the sides of my stand. Now, I wanted these boards to run perfectly horizontally, which means that I need a vertical piece to tie them together. This piece from a pallet I dismembered a while ago will do nicely. Again, with the jigsaw. This was very slow, you guys. The jigsaw was very old, and it actually burned up on me as well about 3/4 of the way through this project. I had to go hunt up another saw, as you'll see later, but hey, we got it done, right? So yeah, like, follow, subscribe so that I can stop getting all of my power tools at garage sales. Anyway, I stole this driver and these screws for my sister's housing project, and once I get the whole thing tied together, I'm going to make the angled cuts along the sides. In order to make sure that the bottom is 18 inches, which it is, and then the top is that 11.5 inches, and it's on center, I put a center mark on the top plate and then also a center mark on my boards. And now all I have to do is mark the edges of that top plate and then use a straight edge, air quotes, to draw the line for my cut down the sides. Look at this jigsaw, just giving it its best. Pulling through for the final lap. It's so close, you guys. Just pay attention. This is as far as it made it. It was trying so hard. Then the blade fell out, and then it started smoking, and it was bad. So yeah, then I went and found this battery-powered skill saw in my dad's shop, which probably would have made more sense to use in the first place, but I try to use my tools first and then go find his. This was also the point at which my camera ran out of memory space, so from this point on, it is phone quality, guys. I apologize. But anyway, here is what the four sides look like put together. I'm now ready to screw it all together and then put the top plate on. I made sure when I designed this that the top plate would rest fully on top of the edge of each board so that it would have that good compressive strength to hold up all of the hammer blows and obviously the heavy anvil. One of the first things my dad asked me when I showed him this project was whether or not I was going to fill the stand with something or weigh it down. Currently, no. It is hollow. It's fairly light and portable. I can always come back later and weigh it down or fill it in if need be, but as things currently stand, pun intended, that width of that base seems to be doing its job, and as you'll see later in the video, it's pretty stable. As a side note, I didn't choose that 18 by 18 inches as the dimensions for the base just because of the angle it would make, although I do think that it's pleasing to the eye. It's also because it's kind of the sweet spot between something that's wide enough to be stable and also small enough that it allows me to step very close to the anvil when I'm working, which is important for ergonomics. By this point, the observant among you have noticed that the top plate is not going to have good contact surface between the sides because of those corners that stick up. But I have a solution for that. I just pulled out one of my hunting knives, and I'm just going to carve the sides down kind of flat. This would have worked slightly better with a draw knife, which I do have, but I did not have it in my shop, so this knife was nice and sharp and it got the job done. All I really needed to do was knock those corners down so that it sat more or less flat. Didn't need to be perfect. In this case, my sander also wasn't here, so it wasn't going to get perfect. But you bet I was thanking myself for having something so sharp laying around. Once I get this more or less flattened out, I'm going to check the fit with the top plate, make sure everything's lining up really good, which it is, and then I'm going to put my handy dandy knife away and then get that top screwed down. If you'd like a hunting knife like this one, then check out my Etsy shop. I should have some coming up soon. Once I get these all screwed down, I'm going to put the anvil up on the stand and see how it feels. One of the reasons that I'm switching out this anvil and building a new stand instead of putting it on the old stand, for example, is because I have been chasing the perfect height for an anvil for myself for a while. One of the guidelines that you'll hear is the face of your anvil should be about level with where your knuckles hang when they're at your side. I apparently have proportionately long arms because this puts the face of my anvil very low. It's also worth noting that the ideal height of your anvil varies with how heavy you're hitting. If I was taking huge swings with a sledgehammer, then yeah, I'd want a lower anvil, but most of the time, I'm doing work that's a little bit lighter, so I'm finding I want my anvil a little bit higher. So I'm just doing a quick finish on the stand. I kind of sanded it over with a flapper disc, and now I'm finishing it with Danish oil. I don't need anything too fancy, I just don't want it to immediately turn black with soot. Once I did that, I started cutting out the little half moon shapes to hold the anvil in place. I started doing this with a skill saw and then realized that I actually had a bandsaw sitting right in my shop. This has been sitting for a while. The blade tension is a little bit slack, but it's still better than the skill saw. Once I get these cut out, I'm just going to hit them with the flapper disc real quick, try to get a little bit better fit inside the sides of the anvil, and then polish them up with Danish oil and screw them in as well. Now, some of you might be wondering whether or not I'm going to put a chain on this, or staple the anvil down, or in some way hold it to the stand. Currently, no. Anvils are heavy, and as such, gravity usually works pretty well on them. I've worked on some anvils that aren't held down at all, which is usually only a problem when you start hammering on the horn and it kind of slowly dances off of the stand. So I'm going to screw these in just how they are and then give this a shot, and I'll let you guys know if for some reason I decide that it also needs to be held down to the stand. I also suspect this might be kind of convenient if I ever need to take my anvil to a fair or a show like I have in the past. Being able to lift the anvil right off of the stand and to stow them however we want in the truck comes in handy sometimes. There you have it. Here's the finished stand. Follow me if you want to see what I actually make using this anvil.